Hello and welcome to this demonstration of my Autopilot project version 2. Okay, it is basically more or less the old code. I just made some final optimization stuff in the coding, but else it should be pretty much like the previous version. I wanted to update it to version 2 just to make it more clear to the public, as it got a bit messy due to all those updates over time that has been in the past for this project. But do note, as you would see in the installation video, that right now you see the Autopilot version 2 text down here. It is because it is the text version. If you selected the no text version, you wouldn't see this. It would only be opened if you have assigned a button to open it. So that's the only difference. This version is click on the screen to open and on the X to close. No, you should click the Autopilot text and then it opens it, the X to close it. If you had a button inside, one click it would open, one click again by the same button it would close. Pretty basic, you can say. Then you have the ability to drag the window around by taking the mouse cursor and move it to the left side here, and it's only gonna work here in the left hand side. When you left click and hold it down, then you can drag it, and when you release the mouse button it would stay where it has been placed. It will stay here for as long as you do not reload Fly with Lua, and that happens when you select another aircraft or move to another airport or whatever it might be. Else you can close it and open it, and it's the same for the button system, of course. It would stay in this position until Fly with Lua is reloaded for some reason. You would see it's reset. There is an advanced tool, the X and Y coordinate tool, I have linked to, and it's also talked about in the installation video, but it is for advanced users, that there is some values you can edit to get it to a new location where you want it to pop up. There is a reason why we are doing as we are, as it is based on where on the screen it is placed, and since it all starts from this left corner, this is 0.0 down here, all the way down there. And then of course if I give it a coordinate, it might be up here. I have one screen resolution and a screen at one size. If you then come and use something smaller, different, it could be that you do not have it on your screen, so the window you would never see it because it's outside of your view. And that's basically why most are tending to keep it down here in the left center, and that's also giving some limitations, but also because we all mostly are looking here to the left. It would be a bit odd over in the right corner sometimes. Even you could do it, but again you are having the problem that due to the pixels and all those things, so it is a bit complicated, and I wouldn't go into further details about it as such. It can be done, but it is a more advanced task. But you could also try and error. You can just try to enter some values and see where it pops up the next time, and then you can find a spot that way. But I made a tool to make it a bit easier for you to find the correct spot for you. Okay, The layout of the autopilot is a compromise of the modes that is in X-Plane by default, because you have to remember this is a project that uses default data refs, so it is based on default data refs, and that's also why sometimes you might get into problems by some add-ons. This is working for mostly general aviation aircraft and such that doesn't use that many custom codes as such. You might find some aircraft where the flight director, the autopilot button, or the yaw damper button can cause a bit of a problem, and that's basically because developers are using custom codes for those variables. But if you are using the button inside the aircraft, even though I do not advise you to use the modes of the autopilot for adjusting the course, speed, heading, altitude, vertical speed, and course, but for the buttons you can do it in the aircraft, and you can see it correspond as it is actually the same. But just remember, sometimes the buttons of my project can't be used, and it's basically because they have done some custom coding behind. So that's one of my limits, and that's also why I would say do not use this project to flight factory aircraft or something like that, as that would not work. It works by Xcraft, I can say, of the version 1 I know. There you can use it and such, but the more custom codes that is used, then of course this project isn't that great and at that aspect. But of course that is no different than what GoFlight or anyone else are providing, because you know what the default simulator can, and then you basically can do that. And other than that, you would have to do custom drivers and such, like you see for GoFlight stuff and such. They are doing custom drivers for given aircraft and such. In the FSX world, we have seen that and such, and that's of course because developers use their own codings. But even though it works by quite some aircrafts, even in this default this add-on aircraft, sorry, not default. There are some limitations. As you can see, you got the odd value of the altitude. That's basically because it is set from inside of the aircraft, and it just updates to that, and that's why I said it can be done, but it kills a bit of my project here. I can reset it by going down to 0, and then because I do a coding behind the scene, you can say, where I give it direct inputs, and that's also why I can control the output. But as soon as you go into the add-on, and the add-on just does like the default stuff, sadly I would say, because it is highly unrealistic to set a value of 850 feet, or at least I haven't seen that in the real life, other than if you have. I can understand it for a general aviation aircraft where you do not have this ability to set it to a preset altitude, but where you just fly to your, you have the altitude hold, and that's also supported. You can see it is supported, and then it would light up green. But do note the value here might not be what the aircraft is flying to. To arm the altitude, it is done by flight level change automatically. Now you can see it is armed, and if you use the vertical speed, there is a hidden click spot where you can can switch it on and off, and it is actually here on the arm. If you click it, it would arm. It is a safety feature there, you can see, because not all aircraft is supporting this. But I have made it so you can do it. So even you are flying an aircraft that normally do not support it, you can use it. But again, I advise you not to do so, because depending on the settings of the aircraft, you really have to do some edits in the plane maker to get it work correctly. Else it doesn't work that well all the time, and you saw that by this aircraft here as well, that even I'm pressing this and it shouldn't be armed, but it does arm in the add-on aircraft, and that's basically due to some custom coding there. So I do not advise as such using that features, other than using my project only and then do what you need to do. Because this aircraft, now it does do this, but in fact it doesn't support it as such, because you can see now it does as you are expecting it to do. Now it is correctly. So there is a custom coding in there, and that's also why I say it is a bit difficult to support all the add-ons, but I have tried to make some adjustments there, here and there, to get it worked by as much as I possibly can. Then you have the adjustment. It is the scroll wheel I'm using, and you got the slow function and you got the fast function. For my project, it's nice to use the scroll support, even though lately I actually find for adjusting in the aircraft outside of my project it to be faster and such by add-ons that is using the click and drag system. And especially if you're taking the default aircraft, it is so slow when you're using the mouse scroll wheel. So and that's also why I did this project. It was to speed up that process, so it could be done quickly, so you could do those adjustments quickly, because sometimes when you're flying online and such, you are getting your hands full, you can say. You get a few things here and there that is affecting your flights, and you have to adjust the comm radio, you have to adjust this and this and this, and then suddenly you end up having a lot of things to do in a very short time. So that's why I did this project, as it originally started out by only the values here that could be changed. But if you click in the lower in this area, no matter where you press, it would be working for all of them. So it's not that you have to click for the speed and then it's only for the speed. No, it's working for them also. Here it's fast, it's fast, it's fast for them all, and I click here, it's slow, it's slow, slow. So that's what it is. Then you got the source, and that's a bit different, because it's not a mode up here. It is actually just to select the course 2. If you want to select the course 1, you click down here, and if you want the GPS, you click here. It was it isn't that optimum way of doing things, you can, or intuitive you can say, but it was a development that continued, so I had to think right out of the box, how could I do it, because I didn't want to extend the panel further, because you have to keep it limited, as it depends on your screen, as there's no nice thing that it would fill up the whole screen. For me, it's a reasonable size. Others, it might be a bit different story, and I try to keep it reasonable size. So that is pretty much why it is the size it is. You got the flight director, the autopilot, engage and disconnect. You can say, and you can see it works just like the default way. If you take the flight director, turn off autopilot. So it is pure default as it is. AT is auto throttle. Use it with caution because the engine can get on fire if the aircraft do not have a limit for it, and that's why I say use it with caution, and normally only in level flight, and you are sure you are selecting an airspeed that would not cause problems as such for the engines if you're using it for an aircraft that do not have such. So it is a bit of a lazy safety feature, or how should I say, that you can use it. Then you got the FLC. It is what you refer to as a flight level change, where you can set the best throttle setting. You can set a thrust setting. Very useful in the climb. You set the best thrust level, and you know what the best climb speed is. When then the aircraft would try to maintain that as good as possible by adjusting your pitch. So that is actually what it does until it reaches the altitude. Then you got the heading engagement, the nav engagement, and as you have seen, the altitude. Then you got the vertical speed. The APP is approach mode. BC is back course, and that is basically it. Then you have to understand how the modes are. To try to keep it simple, I have used the same modes as default, so whenever it is green, it is active, whenever it is red, it is off, and when it is yellow, it is armed. So if I was in a default aircraft, you would see the modes actually are representing more or less, because again I have to be cautious here, because they are different. Even though it is default aircraft, it has been developed over time, and you can see that in the codes, and that's also why it was a bit of a challenge for me to mix it to what it is right now, as some is working great in some aircraft and other is that how should I say, it is working, but it is not intuitive what it does, because the modes might be the same, but for that aircraft it isn't shown the same way. I wouldn't talk too much about it because it's quite complex, and it caused quite some headache to try figure out what would be the best compromises. But in basic, the autopilot project here, for me, I nearly I use it all the time, I have to admit. I only use it, in fact, except from when you go to the very complex jets and such, of course. But else, whenever I have the opportunity and such, I actually use this project, even with the FlyJSim and such 737, works very well, even though the yaw damper has to be used inside of the aircraft. But again, that was what I have been saying about the limitation there. But else, you can adjust the other things, even though in the 737 by FlyJSim you got the click and drag system, so for the heading and such, it's really not a problem as such. But now I just mentioned it, what I have been testing it with as such. But I hope this gave you a informative review of what it is capable of, and if you want to see it in action, go to the videos below. I have made quite some videos. Even though it's the previous version, it should be working just the same way Thank you for watching, and bye bye.